Hello friends, we are in the fourth week of our course and our topic today is Joan Didion's Why I Write. We will see the objectives, then move on to the life and writings of Joan Didion, then focus on the essay that we want to discuss, Why I Write. We will examine the thematic, formal, linguistic and literary aspects of this essay. Then examine human relationships and reflections on life with reference to this essay. We will also compare Somerset Maugham's short story The Verger and Didion's essay Why I Write. There is a beautiful resemblance which we can discuss. And finally, we will see some of the takeaways from this essay and summarize this discussion. What are the objectives? To learn about the achievements of Joan Didion as an essayist and as a novelist. To understand the importance of concrete details and imagery in literature. Literature is all about imagery. Without imagery, there is no literature. To appreciate Didion's art of fiction. To explore the intricacies of grammar in creating stories. To reiterate our faith in imagination and in our life. To investigate the thematic, formal, linguistic and literary features of the essay we have chosen, that is Why I Write. Finally, we will compare Somerset Maugham's story The Verger with this essay by Didion. We will also see some human relationships and reflections on life and also takeaways. Let's think about Joan Didion's life. She was born in 1934 and she is still alive as far as I can verify. She is an essayist, journalist, novelist and a screenplaywright. She won a student essay competition and became an editor with the popular magazine Vogue in New York. She married John Gregory Dunn and when she did not have a child, she adopted one Quintina Rue Dunn. Unfortunately, in course of her life, she lost her husband and also her child. She is known for her contribution to new journalism in America. Here are two quotations from her. The first is, "We tell stories in order to live." Have you ever wondered the reason for telling stories? Here is the reason. According to Didion, we tell stories in order to live. So we can't live without telling stories. That is the hidden meaning of this statement. Then second quotation is, "Character, the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life is a source from which self-respect springs." Look at this. What is character? It is not about ethical or other aspects. According to Didion, the willingness to accept responsibility for one's own life is character, and that is a source from which self-respect springs. She has also an essay called Self-Respect. Please read it if you can locate it. Here are the works of Joan Didion. Under fiction, we have 5 books. Run River, published in 1963. Play It As It Lays, published in 1970. Then we have a Book of Common Prayer, brought out in 1977. And then we have another book, Democracy, which came out in 1984. And the last book that we have under fiction is The Last Thing He Wanted, published in 1996. Under the non-fiction category, we have many writings from Slouching Towards Bethlehem, The White Album, Where I Was From, The Year of Magical Thinking and to Let Me Tell You What I Mean. The title itself is indicative of what the writer is interested in. Let me tell you what I mean. That meaning, conveying meaning, is paramount significance for Didion. Let us see the context in which this essay was written. Originally, Joan Didion gave this as a talk at the University of California, Berkeley. Later on, it was published in New York Times Book Review on 5th December 1976. This is an essay which is often anthologized. That means it is very popular. People like to read it again and again. Didion took this title from George Orwell's essay Why I Write. That means there is another essay called Why I Write by George Orwell, and others also have written. We know Amish Tripathi has also similar title. Now the question is, Why does Didion write? Here is an answer. I write entirely to find out what I am thinking, what I am looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. So it's all about her own perception. It includes everything: thinking, feeling, seeing, meaning, fearing or having hope, all those feelings. That's why she writes. Let's have some discussion on why she chose this title from George Orwell. She uses the word stolen. Didion says she stole this title from George Orwell's essay. There are two reasons that Didion gives for taking this title from Orwell. The first reason is the I sound, which is repeated in all the three words. Why I write. Why I write. To write is to say I. When we write, we have to use that pronoun I, and she calls it an aggressive and hostile act. She also has something more to say on this writing. Setting words on paper is a tactic of a secret bully, an invasion, an imposition of the writer's sensibility on the reader's most private space. We can feel it. She enters our life with her writing, and she is acting something like a bully to make her idea impressed upon us. The second reason is Orwell's title tells everything she wanted to say. What does he want to say? She says writing is my subject, nothing else. And she says she is not a scientist, she is not a scholar, she is also not an intellectual, she is just a writer. Now we move into the essay. We have some topics like this to discuss various aspects of this essay. The first topic is failure of thinking and success of feeling. She has a sentence like this: in short, I tried to think and I failed. Because she failed in thinking, she was attracted to the specific, the tangible and the peripheral. Always she was attracted to the marginal, ordinary things. In a class on the Hegelian dialectic, she would look at the outside world and see a pear tree. Whenever some linguistic theory was discussed in her class, she would look at the Bevatron. It is a military industrial complex at the University of California, Berkeley. She majored in English but did not do it without difficulties. She completed the neglected course on Milton by a special arrangement by the department. She left out one course on Milton and so she had to complete it. Then finally she says, in short, my attention was always on the periphery, on what I could see and taste and touch. Something invisible, intangible, she could not ever focus her mind on. Because of this attention to details, she finally succeeded in discovering herself as a writer. She gives the answer to why I write. She failed in thinking and so she became a writer. Here we have a paragraph from this essay. Let's read it. By which I mean not a good writer or a bad writer, but simply a writer, a person whose most absorbed and passionate hours are spent arranging words on pieces of paper. What do writers do? Here we have a beautiful description of the writer's job, arranging words on pieces of paper. Now writers may arrange words on their screen in a laptop or a desktop. Had my credentials been in order, I would never have become a writer. There is one particular point we have to note. We fail for some reason that we have to understand. Had I been blessed with even limited access to my own mind, there would have been no reason to write. She did not have access to reason, that is thinking. That's why she started writing. She gives a reason here which we quoted earlier. I write entirely to find out what I am thinking, what I am looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. Why did the oil refineries around Carquinez Straits in California seem sinister to me in the summer of 1956? Why have the night lights in the Bevatron, that is the industrial military complex with the nuclear reactor, burned in my mind for 20 years? What is going on in these pictures in my mind? She always had some pictures in her mind. She would talk about some pictures which turned out to stories, some pictures which never took the form of stories. She deals with the pictures of a patient and a writer in one section. She says there are certain images that shimmer around the edges, on the margin, always on the margin. She tells us about a picture of a cat drawn by a schizophrenic in a psychology textbook. Whenever we see the cat, there will be some background. Sometimes you will find the picture of a cat and a rabbit, which one looks what. This is an exercise in perception. This can happen in a psychology textbook. It can also happen in real life with some people who take hallucinogens, that is some drugs for hallucinating. Didion is not a schizophrenic as we have in a psychology textbook or in psychological field. She is also not on hallucinogens, but she has certain images always in her mind. That's why she says, but certain images shimmer for me. Some pictures always go around in her mind. Strangely, these pictures develop on their own. In fact, they have a grammar of their own. That's what she says. Now she discusses the idea of grammar in detail in this paragraph. Just as I meant shimmer literally, I mean grammar literally. Grammar is a piano I play by ear. Here is a beautiful metaphorical definition of grammar. Grammar is a piano I play by ear. Since I seem to have been out of school the year the rules were mentioned. All I know about grammar is its infinite power to shift the structure of a sentence, alters the meaning of that sentence as definitely and inflexibly as the position of a camera alters the meaning of the object photographed. She makes a comparison between grammar and camera here. If you alter the position of camera, then the picture will also appear differently. Similarly, if you alter the words in a sentence, the structure in a sentence, then that meaning also will change. Many people know about camera angles now, but not so many know about sentences. That's why she writes. The arrangement of the words matters, and the arrangement you want can be found in the picture in your mind. The picture dictates the arrangement. The picture dictates whether this will be a sentence with or without clauses, a sentence that ends hard or a dying false sentence, long or short, active or passive. The picture tells you how to arrange the words, and the arrangement of the words tells you or tells me what is going on in the picture. So the picture has its own arrangement in the form of words, and that gives us a story. Now let's come to the pictures that have told some stories and some which have not told stories for Joan Didion. Play It As It Lays is a novel, the second novel that she wrote. She started this novel with two pictures in her mind. The first picture is a white space, an empty space, and she says there is no story without any situation. No story, no situation. The second picture is about a young woman with a long hair and a short halter. Halter is a dress. What Didion does is to witness this picture in her mind. She did not have any knowledge of these characters or situations in advance. When these pictures appear, the novel begins to tell itself. She has one chapter about Maria where the beginning and the end of a chapter is the same sentence. As a writer, Joan Didion has recalled a number of pictures in her mind. When she was writing a Book of Common Prayer, she had some pictures. Some pictures did not tell the story. Some pictures told the story. For example, the picture of the Beavertron, which appeared several times in her mind, which she mentions in the essay 5 times. A newspaper photograph of a hijacked 707 aircraft burning. The night view from a hotel room on the Colombian coast. These pictures did not have much to tell about any story, but certain pictures told the story for her. For example, the Panama airport at 6 a.m. when she was traveling to Bogota. She felt hot air, damp skirt, asphalt sandals. She remembered the big tail of a Pan American flight. She also heard the sound of a slot machine. There was again a particular woman of 40. She went on possessing our writer Joan Didion. She gives us a paragraph on a picture that tells a story. Here it goes. The picture that did tell the story, the picture that shimmered and made these other images coalesce, come together, was the Panama airport at 6 a.m. I was in this airport only once, on a plane to Bogota that stopped for an hour to refuel, but the way it looked that morning remained superimposed on everything I saw until the day I finished a book of common prayer. I lived in that airport for several years, though she visited that place only once. I can still feel the hot air when I step off the plane, can see the heat already rising off the tarmac at 6 a.m. I can feel my skirt damp and wrinkled on my legs. I can feel the asphalt stick to my sandals. I remember the big tail of a Pan American plane floating motionless down at the end of the tarmac. I remember the sound of a slot machine in the waiting room. I could tell you that I remember a particular woman in the airport, an American woman, a North Americana, about 40, who wore a big square emerald in lieu of a wedding ring, but there was no such woman there. So she remembers some picture. Now how does she make up a story? She made up the story, she made up a country, she made up an airport, she made up even a family. She introduced the character Charlotte Douglas, who was not even a passenger. Didion tells us more about this Charlotte Douglas, who insisted on making the water boil for 20 minutes to make tea in a coffee shop at the airport. There is a sentence about this lady. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport even if Victor did not. I knew about airports. Didion says the narrative drive gains momentum by adding even if Victor did not. So we have one character Charlotte Douglas, another character called Victor. She did not know about them in detail, but they appeared one after another. They appear and the relationship is established between them. When more details are added, the narrative drive gains momentum. Didion gives us more details about why she writes. She goes back to this writing again. I knew why Charlotte went to the airport even if Victor did not. I knew about airports. This I was the voice of no author in my house. This I was someone who not only knew why Charlotte went to the airport but also knew someone called Victor. Who was Victor? Who was his narrator? Why was his narrator telling me this story? Let me tell you one thing about why writers write. Had I known the answer to any of these questions, I would never have needed to write a novel. So you can understand there is a narrator who enters the mind of the writer and tells a story. From this passage we can understand that the I of the novel is not the voice of the author but the voice of the omniscient narrator. We have the answer to the question why I write from this essay, Didion's essay Why I Write. She writes because she thinks about her own perceptions. She is possessed by some voice which appears and tells a story. Let's now look into the thematic contrast. Of course, there is a contrast between writing and reading. There is a writer and there is a reader. Both are involved in this process. As a writer, one can imitate some other writer like Didion borrowing the title from George Orwell, that is stealing, and also establishing one's own originality by creating a new idea. Writing is an aggression and also a compassion. Two opposite ideas are brought together. Didion talks about thinking and failing. She failed in thinking and succeeded in feeling, that's why she became a writer. She also talks about an idea which is presented in the form of pictures. We have some abstract ideas that is represented in thinking to which she never had any inclination, but concrete details on the margin, they always attracted Didion. So we have the picture and also word, center and periphery. This is a common binary that we find in this essay. We also have the beginning and ending in a particular novel, and then Didion also talks about imagination and reality. In reality, we may not have seen the character or the picture, but then it appears, the picture appears in our imagination. There is also a subjective eye, the writer's eye, and the narrator's eye, that is objective eye. Let's now take a formal analysis of this prose piece. We can say that the mode of this essay is personal, meditative, and explanatory. There is a kind of reflection that goes on in the writer's mind. She explains why she wrote this essay and also all other writings. Her aim is to give reasons for the writers writing novels and stories plus essays. She gives some evidences. She had some difficulty with completing her master's degree at Berkeley, that is University of California at Berkeley. She had some interest always in the periphery, feeling or looking at concrete objects. She gives some examples from two of her writings. One is Play It As It Lays, another is A Book of Common Prayer. Particularly with reference to the second novel, A Book of Common Prayer, we have two characters. She introduces them and tells us how they appeared in her writing. One is Charlotte Douglas and another is Victor. We can learn two lessons from this kind of essay. One is to discover what you can do and do it, and another is failure in academics does not mean failure in life. Didion could not even complete her studies and she had to do some kind of special arrangement to complete her course and get a degree. So nothing to worry if there is a failure in one aspect. Now let's move on to the linguistic analysis. We find a lot of repetitions in this essay. Didion's love of sounds, particularly the I sound, is mentioned with reference to why I write. That I sound is repeated 3 times. She also mentions the Bevatron, the military industrial complex about nuclear reactor 5 times in this essay, which did not even have anything to do with telling stories. That picture did not tell stories. She says about her college days, during those years I was traveling on what I knew to be a very shaky passport, forged papers. I knew that I was no legitimate resident in any world of ideas. I knew I couldn't think. All I knew then was what I couldn't do. All I knew then was what I wasn't, and it took me some years to discover what I was. Look at this, I knew, repeated several times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times repeated in this short passage. She says, I knew, and finally she says, she did not know many things, and then it took long time for her to discover who she was. We also have a series of questions with reference to the character that she describes. Who is paging her? Paging like sending SMS. Earlier we used to have a machine called pager. Why is she here to be paged? How exactly did she come to this? Like this, she keeps on asking questions to reflect and move on further. Now we are coming to the literary analysis of this essay. We have some metaphors in this essay which are very powerful. I tried with a kind of hopeless late adolescent energy to buy some temporary visa into the world of ideas, to forge for myself a mind that could deal with the abstract. She failed in dealing with abstract, that is thinking. She was trying to forge herself to bring her attention to something and to buy some visa, temporary visa to the world of ideas. We can see the metaphor there. My attention veered inexorably back to the specific, to the tangible, to what was generally considered by everyone I knew then, and for that matter have known since, the peripheral. She always moved away from main to the margin, veered away, moved away. Then I knew that I was no legitimate resident, a person who living in a particular place, a resident in any world of ideas. World of ideas is abstract, resident is concrete. She puts them together. And the most beautiful metaphorical expression that we have in this essay is, grammar is a piano I play by ear. It's a definition, metaphorical definition of grammar. Grammar is something abstract, language is abstract, but she considers it as a piano and she plays by ear. Last one is, to shift the structure of a sentence alters the meaning of that sentence as definitely and inflexibly as the position of a camera alters the meaning of the object photographed. So to shift, to alter is a kind of metaphorical activity that we can see in connection with the sentence and also the camera. Now let's see the human relationships that we have in this essay. Please remember, Why I Write is an essay about the art of writing. What does it have to do with personal relationships, one may ask, but then we have to realize writing is all about human relationships, the author, the self and the society, the author and the rest of the world. Writing is a hostile and aggressive act to impose oneself on the reader. Whenever a writer starts writing, the moment we set pen on to paper, there is a reader. We may be the first reader, but there is a reader or many readers. We convey our ideas to them, and this is a hostile and aggressive act according to Didion. People's behavior depends on their motivations. We may have different kinds of motivations, and these are responsible for our positive and negative interactions. She asks a question, why does Charlotte Douglas want to have the water boil for 20 minutes before making tea for her in the airport? And she gives a reason. People are idiosyncratic creatures. They have their own reasons, we don't know, but they are fascinating for writers and readers. Relationships tend to be aggressive and compassionate at the same time. That's why we have this expression, sadomasochism refers to the kind of happy and unhappy feeling that we have with ourselves and the rest of the world. We give pain to others and feel happy, that is one aspect. Another is we receive pain from others and feel happy. So without pain we will not be happy. Giving or receiving, that is sadomasochism. Let's do some reflections on life based on this essay. Didion says there is a need for justifying, explaining what we do. Why do we do what we do? We have to understand, justify it to ourselves. There may be some explanations which will be useful for some people. We owe our justifications to the world. Why do I write? Or why do I teach? Why do you listen? Why do you study? You have to justify for yourself. Imitation is a route to our originality. That's a beautiful reflection on life. Without imitation, imitating writers, imitating our parents, imitating the society, we may not be able to really find out where we are innovative, original about ourselves. Arrangement of words or management of language is an essential skill to know the voice that speaks us. We are arranging the words, of course. Some voice tells us a story, but we have to know how we arrange the words, how we manage our language. We also have to understand that the speaking I can be anything other than the voice that comes from us. Stories choose writers and tell themselves. That is another aspect which is very interesting. We don't tell stories, stories come through us. Now here are two questions for us. Do we know the story that has chosen us? What is a story that has chosen me? Or what are the stories that have chosen me? Do you know that, or do I know? Are we ready to tell our stories? That is another question. When stories possess us, are we ready to tell the stories? Some of us receive stories, but we don't tell them for various reasons. We make a comparison between Somerset Maugham and Didion in this section now. William Somerset Maugham is well known for his short stories. One of the most popular stories of Maugham is The Verger. There is a bank manager who asks the foreman, who was originally a verger, who has a business and who has deposited a lot of money in the bank. So the bank manager asks Mr. Foreman where he would have reached if he had had a good education. This verger was not educated, he didn't know how to write, even put his signature, that was his problem. Now the foreman replies at the end of the story, I can tell you that, sir, said Mr. Foreman, a little smile on his aristocratic features. I would be verger of St. Peter's, Neville Square. He was the bell ringer at the church in Neville Square. The priest asked him to learn reading, but he could not do it, and then he started his business and became a good businessman. Joan Didion's essay, Why I Write, has also something similar to this experience. She has a beautiful sentence, had my credentials been in order, I would never have become a writer. She had difficulties in completing her studies. She didn't have a wonderful distinguished degree. So she says, Had I known the answer to any of these questions, I would never have needed to write a novel. So, like the foreman, if she had succeeded in education, she would not have become the writer that she has become, the most popular writer, the most celebrated writer in America. What are the takeaways from this essay? We become what we are due to forces beyond our control. That is the first lesson that we have to learn from this essay. We need to flow with the flow of life, that is, we have to get completely absorbed, immersed and involved in whatever we do. In this context, we can remember the positive psychology of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the Hungarian American psychologist who theorized the concept of flow. Just get into the flow, you will achieve whatever you want. Just get a degree and get along with your own life. That is what we do after getting our education. Excellence in education will lead you somewhere you did not actually want to go. That is exemplified in the case of Joan Didion in real life, and also in the case of Mr. Foreman in imaginative life in the story of William Somerset Maugham. Clarity in understanding your own position in and attitude to the world is significant. We can recall Amish Tripathi, who has said, "Our soul prepares us for our life," in his essay Why I Write. To give a summary of whatever we have discussed on Didion's essay Why I Write, let us see. We looked into the objectives of doing this presentation, saw the life and writings of Joan Didion, moved on to discuss Why I Write. We read some passages from this essay and then noted down certain features of this essay, particularly focusing on answering the question why I write. We looked into the thematic, formal, linguistic and literary aspects of this essay, found that this is a wonderful piece of writing which we can read and enjoy. We focused on the human relationships and certain reflections on life which would be useful to us. These relationships can be with real life people or with people who appear as images in our own mind, as in the case of this writer Joan Didion. We compared Somerset Maugham's short story The Verger with Why I Write, the essay by Didion, and learned education or completing education or successful education does not mean a successful life. Certain takeaways we looked into this essay, that means accept our life as it is, get along with life, keep moving and do what you can do. Do whatever appears to you to be beautiful, do it. Here are some references for you. If you are interested in learning more about Didion and her essays, please look at some of these essays about her life and about her essays. You will enjoy them. Thank you.